This is the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra.
Great God of the universe, Eke that created the world, the benevolent God of our ancestors, land of the rising sun. We have gathered again in great numbers today, for a toad does not run in the daylight for nothing. If one sees a toad running in broad daylight, let it be known that something is after its life. Great deluge have assembled against us and must be scattered by a divine tempest sent by you. King that lives above, sweep away not only their shadows, but also their footprints. We have not risen against man or woman. It is you that gave us this land for our refuge. God the Creator, open our ears and our mind to perceive what we will hear today. You are the one that have given us life. Now give us what we use to sustain it. Give us a kingdom with great wisdom and an abundant freedom. It is said that a visitor must not overshadow his host, but when going, may he not depart with a protruding back. The little Ekwe have started at peeling the Ikoro, the great wooden gong. We are experiencing darkness in broad daylight. Please help us to uproot all the nefarious weeds from the length and breadth of our land. Let the kite perch, and let the egret perch, and let the eagle perch. A church should not be overpowered for what God has given to him. Guide and accompany us as we proceed on this our journey, for we are banking on your strength to reach to this our destination. So whoever positions himself before his personal God, may he run himself to exhaustion. Peace must reign in our land. May your will prevail, and let all be according to your will. He said.
And here is a special announcement from the leadership of Biafra government in exile.
I think given present events happening across Biafra land and in entire Nigeria today, it is very important that BCB has made the Biafra genocide a big topic to discuss in their special broadcast this October. I'm not going to make a speech, but to make some facts very clear so that every listener, a Biafran, a friend of Biafra, or anyone at all, will be able to understand the facts and be able to see where Biafrans are coming from in their agitation for freedom and for self-determination. Let me start by saying that the UN Charter on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the African Union Charter, they all affirm to the adherence to the principles of human and people's rights and freedoms as contained in their declarations, their conventions, and other instruments adopted by the UN and the AU. It is a known fact that the right to self-determination is one right that is inalienable. That means every human being has that right. You cannot deny anyone that right. The idea that indigenous peoples have the right to choose how they want to be governed, who they want to associate with, they have the right to pursue their preferred economic and social development, and the right to worship their God freely, without fear or being harassed or killed. It is also a known fact that the peoples and nation of Biafra have been denied these rights, forcefully, I must add. In so doing, especially during the War of Survival, heinous crimes against humanity were committed against Biafran people. Genocide was the greatest of these crimes. Amazingly, the world turned a blind eye, and still turns a blind eye to these crimes. A lot of people argue that there is no proof that the intention during the war was to exterminate a particular ethnic group. However, the idea that it is difficult to prove genocidal intent does not mean that the crime of genocide was not committed. In actual fact, I must argue, based on the findings by a certain Dr. Mensah from Ghana. In 1968, he was the officer responsible for conducting an inquiry into the killings in Biafra land. And his report was published in England on May 31, 1969. This was a report of an independent investigation into Biafra allegations of genocide. The inquiry was, succinctly recorded by Susanna Kronje and Oberon Wu in their book, Biafra, Britain's Shame. And I want to quote from page 113 of that book. This inquiry was held under the auspices. Hold on a second. And I will quote directly from the book. This inquiry was held under the auspices of the International Committee for the Investigation of Crimes of Genocide, under the patronage of the Cardinal Felton, Chief Rabbi Kaplan, Pastor Westphal, President of the French Protestant Federation, and an international committee of lawyers, including judges and lawyers from France, Russia, Mexico, Romania, Brazil, Venezuela, and Italy, under the chairmanship of a British man called Professor Lopez Ray. The inquiry, conducted in Biafra and Nigeria from December 1968, took evidence from 650 people in Biafra and 490 people in Nigeria, of which 342 were combatants. So these were soldiers that took part in the war. The officer responsible for conducting the inquiry, as I said earlier, is Dr. Mensah. He interviewed members of the International Observer Team and people serving in the administration on both sides. He records that no impediments were put in the way of his inquiry by either government. His conclusion, which was accepted by the International Committee, was that prima facie evidence of genocide and also of genocidal intent existed. End of quote. So those who argue that there wasn't an intent to commit genocide are just blatantly wrong. So, continuing from the book, Dr. Mensah listed 10 places at which investigations have convinced him that deliberate civilian massacres occurred since the war started. Deliberate civilian massacres occurred. The first place is Asaba. In Asaba, where the massacre was also reported in the Observer. There was also massacre in Bini. There was also massacre in Sapele, in Warri, in Koko, in Ogwashukwu, in Ishiago, in Enugu Eziri, in Nsukka, and Onitsha. So Dr. Mensah adds that he received reports and eyewitness accounts of massacres at other places, but was unable to investigate them in the time at his disposal. And he concludes like this. He concludes his report after many stipulations about the difficulty of proving the intent of genocide with these words. I am of the opinion that in many of the cases cited to me, hatred of Biafrans and a wish to exterminate them was foremost motivational factor. End of quote. Further down in page 114, he went on to say this, and this is very important. Methods of extermination listed by Dr. Mensah included machine gunning of all males of Biafra origin in newly captured towns, conscripting of younger Biafrans for use as cannon fodders, burial alive of children with their executed parents in mass graves. An example of this was seen in Asaba. Devastation of houses, farms, and livestock in retreat, starvation, bombing, and other methods which Dr. Mensah relates in those cases where he was able to verify the incident. End of quote. The mere fact that the international community have conveniently chosen to sweep these atrocities under the carpet does not mean that they do not exist or that they did not take place. A time will come when justice will be served and the perpetrators of these crimes brought to justice. Finally, on the issue of genocide, let me quote from the work of a well-respected and highly knowledgeable philosopher, Professor Innocent Odenigbo, of blessed memory, on the need for Biafra freedom and self-determination. In its genocidal enterprise, Nigeria obtained the ready military and diplomatic assistance of Britain, the former Soviet Union, Spain, the then Organization of African Unity, led by the former Ethiopian head of state, Emperor Haile Selassie, the non-aligned nations led by President Tito of the former Yugoslavia, and the United Nations Organization led by Mr. U. Tant. The lie being bandied about by Britain and Nigeria was that if Biafra was allowed to secede from Nigeria, the whole of Africa would be afflicted by the disease of secession. Shamelessly, the so-called civilized world colluded with Nigeria in the massacre of millions of Biafran men, women, and children. The principle of human rights was thrown to the winds. Biafra was strangled by overwhelming military force, diplomatic frauds, and starvation. Even Christian charity organizations and the International Red Cross were dissuaded and frustrated by Britain and Nigeria from delivering urgently needed food materials and medicine, which would have saved lives. Whether we believe it or not, there is a great being who is in control of events on earth. And he goes on to say this. Some refer to him as Karma. We call him God. Nigeria thought that once Biafra was defeated in battle, everything would be all right, and she will live happily ever after. And he ended that paragraph by saying this. There is no way you can spill the blood of 3.5 million people and expect that there would not be some retribution. We all know what is happening in Nigeria today. End of quote. The most worrying thing is that these crimes against Biafrans are still going on today. All over the social media, all over the news, you will see very disturbing pictures, very disturbing stories about the killings of our people. It has become more pronounced under the current government, whose agenda is to promote Islamic rule in Nigeria. Young Biafrans are murdered daily by the Nigerian army, the police, and the DSS. Thousands killed, kidnapped, disappeared without return. Thousands of Christian churches destroyed, and Christians slaughtered in large numbers. Recently, the Nigerian army commenced military operations across the southeast, and we have seen cases of unarmed Biafrans gunned down in broad daylight by the army. And we could hear some officers shouting, "Shoot anyone you see." The agitation for the restoration of the state of Biafra has been and is still a peaceful agitation. All pro-Biafra groups have remained peaceful, including IPOB led by Nnamdi Kanu, have remained peaceful despite extreme provocations from the Nigerian army, the Nigerian police, and the DSS. Nnamdi Kanu is still illegally detained by the DSS after his kidnapped from Kenya by Nigeria. A blatant breach in international protocol on extradition. Yet, Britain, whose citizen Kanu is, have failed to challenge Nigeria. Why? Your guess is as good as mine. To end this peace, we must look into the future with hope and expectation. Without hope, without the belief that a new day will arrive, then there is no point. We must have hope with an unshaken desire for our dreams of freedom and self-determination to come true. Difficult it may seem, impossible it is not. Where there is a will, there is a way. And that way does not include violence. It does not include hatred and wanton destruction of lives and property. That way is peaceful, it's diplomatic, it's democratic. As a people, we love even strangers. We love our people. We are the cradle of democracy. The principles of live and let live. Ewe bere, ugo bere. Dialogue, meeting umunna. Collegiate and communal decision-making processes are inherent in all the ethnic nationalities in Biafra land. Whether you go to Igbo land, or Ijo, or Efik, or Ibibio, and the others, the values and beliefs are similar. Therefore, our fight for freedom, our struggle to exit from Nigeria must be anchored on the basis of these core principles. We did not start the war in 1967. We were pushed to the wall. Our people were slaughtered in the north in thousands. We were attacked by Nigeria. These are the facts. The men in Asaba, young and old, came out peacefully. They were all lined up and gunned down. Defenseless. No resistance. A painful death. The intention was to kill every living male of a particular ethnic group. That is the definition of genocide. It was genocide in all intent and purposes. It was a crime against humanity, and the perpetrators must be brought to justice. Part of justice for us will be for Biafrans to be allowed to decide for themselves where they want to belong, in a referendum or a plebiscite. It is the right thing to do. It is a civilized way of resolving political issues. And so Biafrans deserve it. They deserve to be given their space, their time, their safety, to be able to speak and for their voices to be heard. If they decide to remain in one Nigeria, so be it. If they decide to be a separate nation from Nigeria, that view must be respected. Every Biafran life is sacred. It must not be killed. God bless you all, Biafrans and friends of Biafra. And may God bless the Republic of Biafra.
This is BCB.
Mungu unaishi, hakuna mavumbini kuniweka nafasi ya heshima. Tegemeo langu, tumaini langu ni wewe Bwana Mungu unaishi, hakuna kama wewe. Jinsi malaika wameshuka mbele ya hicho kiti cha enzi, nasi duniani tunaimba tukisema asante kwa damu yako ya ukombozi. Haleluya. Kulingana nawe, nani wa kupingana nawe? Milele unadumu.
Ewo, 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 ewo. Fellow Biafrans, this is a time to mourn, a time to cry, a time to pray. This is a season of anguish. We are in the midst of loss. Fellow Biafrans, this is Rosama. This is BCB, the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra. We continue our exploration of Biafra genocide with a special focus on Asaba Massacre. Asaba Massacre, early October 1967. Our program is a solemn moment to recall Asaba Massacre, a traumatic event at the beginning of the Biafra-Nigerian War. This massacre was a harbinger of what was to come, what would be repeated in several towns across Biafra during the war, what would become a pattern of war crimes by the Nigerian army. The Asaba Massacre was a watershed in the story of the genocide against Biafrans, and specifically Igbo people. In early October 1967, Nigerian soldiers entered Asaba, a town on the southwestern edge of the River Niger, with a primary purpose to end the war. They had been humiliated by a ragtag Biafran army in Benin, but Nigeria would not rest until Biafra was erased. In his journal for that period, C. Odumegwu Ojukwu, General of the People's Army, had a very short entry, October 1 to 3rd. Fall of the Midwest, massacre of more than 1,000 Igbos in Asaba by Nigerian troops. Enemy advance to 9 Mile Corner near Enugu. Very brief, but memorable. Now, listen to renowned author Chinua Achebe's rendering of the same event, the massacre, in his book, There Was a Country. The Asaba Massacre. Achebe writes, the federal forces were soon able to snatch Benin from Biafran military hands and advance quickly toward the River Niger, arriving in Asaba in early October 1967. There are multiple versions of what transpired in Asaba, a River Niger town. The version I heard amounted to this. Commanding GOC Division 2 and his lieutenants felt humiliated by the Biafran Midwestern offensive and, armed with direct orders to retake the occupied areas at all costs, rounded up and shot as many defenseless Igbo men and boys as they could find. Some reports place the death toll at 500, others as high as 1,000. There are opposing reports as to whether Haruna acted alone or with direct orders from Murtala Mohammed. The consensus opinion is that Murtala Mohammed made the final decisions on the field. What is also clear is that, quote, the Nigerian soldiers killed as many Igbo males over the age of 10 years that they could find, unquote. These ethnic Igbos were accused of aiding and abetting the Biafran army, enemies of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The Asaba massacre, as it will be known, was only one of many such post-pogrom atrocities committed by Nigerian soldiers during the war. It became a particular abomination for Asaba residents, as many of those killed were titled Igbo chiefs and common folk alike, and their bodies were disposed of with reckless abandon in mass graves without regard to the wishes of the families of the victims or the town's ancient traditions. This is what they have done to our people. The civilians killed were unarmed. You may wonder why we return to this genocide, this act of horror. We want to affirm BCB's goal to remember our history, even in its gruesomeness, so that we may not repeat it. To remind our people why we are engaged in this struggle for liberation. We return to this trauma because those who have been traumatized do not have the privilege of forgetting. Because our responsibility at BCB as a voice of liberation is to fight against forgetting. We return to this story of Biafran genocide because it has not ended. Because the Nigerian government continues to massacre us. Because Nigeria refuses to acknowledge its role in our wounding or to accept responsibility for the harm it has caused our people in the past and present. Because we must reclaim our humanity and dignity. We remember that day because it was. We remember that event because it happened to us. We remember our brothers and sisters who died that day because they matter. We remember them so that we may mourn them and ourselves. We remember because we are Biafrans, and our spirits, rights, and dignity shall not be trampled. We begin with an explanation of the word genocide. In an earlier program on Biafra Remembrance Day in May, we addressed some aspect of the topic of genocide. Today, we want to continue that exploration of genocide against Biafrans by highlighting Asaba massacre in early October 1967 as an example of the larger project to eradicate us. Genocide, what is it? According to the UN Office on Genocide Prevention and the Responsibility to Protect, quote, the word genocide was first coined by Polish lawyer Raphael Lemkin in 1944 in his book, Axis Rule in Occupied Europe, unquote. Consisting of two important parts, quote, the Greek prefix genus, meaning race or tribe, and the Latin suffix side, meaning killing, unquote. Genocide, as defined by the Oxford Dictionary, is, quote, the deliberate and systematic extermination of an ethnic or national group, unquote. In short, it is the destruction or the elimination of a nation or ethnic group. And that's what Nigeria has been doing to us. Article 2 of the Genocide Convention states that, quote, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. The article then delineates the processes, including A, killing members of the group, B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, D, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. E, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. The article also states that, quote, to constitute genocide, there must be a proven intent on the part of the perpetrators to physically destroy a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, unquote. So, what was the Asaba massacre? It would seem that we were in the midst of a genocide. So the Asaba massacre serves as an example of such act, the physical destruction of members of an ethnic group. It was calculated, it was deliberate, it was meant to end us. The troops singled out Igbos, separated them from other groups, and shot them. Now you tell me, what else can this be if not genocide? Biafrans, let's get wiser. The story we are telling is not a happy one, Biafrans. Some may say it is a story not to tell, but we at BCB assert that it is one we must tell and hear. We must know what happened to us, what happened to our people, to better understand why we are engaged in this liberation struggle today. And so in this segment, I will read excerpts from the book, The Asaba Massacre, Trauma, Memory, and the Nigerian Civil War by S. Elizabeth Bird and Fraser M. Otanelli, who use a combination of anecdotal witness testimony and reportage to provide us extensive picture of what was happening in Asaba during those few days of the massacre. I am warning you, the narrative is gruesome, but please listen. Focusing on the personal experience of one Celestina Isichie, the authors reveal to us the horror the residents of Asaba endured in those few days. So listen. The October 7 massacre. Although there was trepidation and some refused to participate, hundreds of men, women, and children, including some who had originally fled to the bush, assembled for a parade. Witnesses report both traditional criers with gongs and bands with loudspeakers calling everyone to participate. Luke Enemo recalls that the, quote, the chief information officer, unquote, from Benin City, an Asaba man named Frederick Conway, was on one of these vans, which helped assuage some people's anxieties. Others were dragged out from their home by soldiers and ordered to participate. And now these authors begin to talk about Celestina. Celestina Isichie's father lived in one of the grandest homes in Asaba, a compound that included a main brick-built house and several outbuildings. The family, which included her parents, older brother Emma with his wife and small child, younger brother Osi, and sisters, had felt relatively safe. Her father was an influential man, and only a year before, the family had celebrated the ordination of her brother Patrick as a Catholic priest. Now, they were cowering as bullets began to hit their home. Osi and his friend Callistus, then 16-year-old students at St. Patrick's College, hid under beds. And I'm quoting them. We were besieged. Then they rushed into the house. Panic made my brother and his friend rush out. They said they were Biafran soldiers. We pleaded that they were not. I don't know if they were drunk or under the influence of drugs. The testimony ends. The soldiers ordered the family to leave, and they obeyed. Seeing a group of women had gathered for the forced dance outside the gates of the compound, they tried to join them. The testimony continues. Callistus and Osi were running in front. First of all, Callistus was dragged out and shot. Osi tried to mingle among the women. They pulled him out and he was shot down. I fell on him, thinking he would wake up. I shook him. And then the testimony ends. Celestina had no choice but to continue on the road with the woman. With community elders in front, up to 4,000 townspeople participated. Many gathered by a large tree across from the High Court on Nebisi Road, where they were joined by groups coming out from houses throughout the 5 quarters of Asaba. Christopher Mbaya, a St. Patrick's College student, was anxiously waiting in his home, having already witnessed the death of a school friend. The testimony returns. After some time, we started hearing a dancing group. One Nigeria, one Nigeria, one Nigeria, one Nigeria. And some people, relations, were running into the house coming from another village. They now told us they have started killing people, and this dancing group that are coming, you should go and join them. That the soldiers said we must come down to welcome. I said, let us go, myself and my cousin. So as we are coming out towards the Nebisi Road, the dancing group, soldiers surrounded them. We are guiding them, that is Nigerian soldiers carrying guns. Then we all raised up our hands and were shouting, one Nigeria, and we continued. Testimony ends. The crowd advanced along the main Nebisi Road, past St. Joseph's Catholic Church. Any expectation that these gestures of goodwill would appease the troops was quickly dashed. As Nkbaya noted, marchers were flanked by federal soldiers to prevent them from fleeing, and witnesses report that they would also randomly select males and execute them in full view of participants, as they did with Osi Isichie. Survivors recall seeing dozens of bodies, including that of one of the town criers, along with the mangled bodies of the 4 who had been sent earlier to deliver money. Once the crowd reached the corner of Obogonogo and Ogbeke markets, troops separated out women and small children, many of whom were corralled into a maternity hospital on Nebisi Road, while the men and boys of around 12 and above were channeled between 2 rows of soldiers down the side road that led to the square of Ogbe Osowa, a village in the Asaba quarter of Ubomanta. As the violence escalated, some federal officers like Paul Ogbobo tried to intervene, and now the testimony begins again. And this is from Paul. I was coming on my Jeep and I saw a boy being taken away to be shot, and the mother held him by the waist. And then I came out and asked for this nonsense to be stopped. And when they refused, I cocked my gun and said, don't do it or I'll kill you. I managed to save some lives there. We contacted our headquarters at Umunede, saying what should we do? However, the testimony ends. However, things were now out of control. Ogbegbo reported that he left the scene to join his own troops, who were camped out at the outskirts of town. At this point, witnesses describe mothers attempting to protect young ones. This is very graphic, my people. Here we have the Nigerian troops humiliating our people, shooting them as if they were shooting rats. And in this section, you can see the mothers trying to protect their children. Women who came with their sons were removing their skirts and gloves to disguise so that their male children, they are no longer men, but women. So when I saw this scenario going on and I felt something is wrong, if these women can disguise their children and my mother is not here, what do I do? And I looked at the whole place. There is nowhere to escape. Another testimony continues. When we got there, they said we should now stop. As we stopped there, they now surrounded us, sat us all down. They start whipping us. The next thing we see, the officer spoke in Hausa. I was born in the north, so I heard what he said. He said they should take us 10 by 10 and start firing us. I said, we are finished. Some people said they are just trying to threaten us. That officer now picked out somebody from the midst, shot him, picked out another person, shot him. Then people were praying, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they did. According to another witness, 20 of our men were selected and lined up in front of us and told as follows, quote, today, I be your God. Me first, God second. God give you life. Me, I go take him. 2 minute time, you go die, unquote. 2 minutes afterwards, these 20 men were shot. Another 20 were picked up and the same ritual followed. How can we not describe this? How can this not be seen as genocide? Deliberate, carefully crafted. In fact, reporting his finding in the Vatican, Rome, Le Monde, the French evening newspaper on April 5th, 1968, Monsignor George, who was sent on a fact-finding mission by His Holiness the Pope, stated, quote, there has been genocide. For example, on the occasion of the 1966 massacres, 2 areas have suffered badly from the fighting. Firstly, the region between the towns of Benin and Asaba, where only widows and orphans remain. Federal troops, having for unknown reasons massacred all the men. According to eyewitnesses of that massacre, the Nigerian commander ordered the execution of every Igbo male over the age of 10 years, unquote. Even General Gowon, then commander-in-chief of the Nigerian army, would acknowledge that he and the Federal Republic of Nigeria were guilty of war crimes against Biafrans when he apologized for the Asaba massacre. Here, quoting Gowon in Achebe's book. According to Achebe, Gowon broke his silence 35 years later on this matter and apologized for this atrocity to the Igbos in Asaba. And Achebe quotes Gowon. It came to me as a shock when I came to know about the unfortunate happenings that happened to the sons and daughters of Asaba domain. I felt very touched, and honestly, I referred to the killings and asked for forgiveness, being the one who was in charge at that time. Certainly, it is not something that I would have approved of in whatsoever. I was made ignorant of it, I think, until it appeared in the papers. A young man wrote a book at that time. Achebe continues that other Nigerian officers did not show remorse. Quote, testifying at the Justice Oputa panel, a Nigerian version of South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Major General Ibrahim Haruna, belligerent and unremorseful as ever, proclaimed, as the commanding officer and leader of the troops that massacred 500 men in Asaba, I have no apology for those massacred in Asaba, Owerri, and Amaneke Item. I acted as a soldier maintaining the peace and unity of Nigeria. If General Yakubu Gowon apologized, he did it in his own capacity. As for me, I have no apology. Nigeria has never apologized. The federal government has never apologized. All they ask for us to do is join Nigeria, stay in Nigeria. While the Nigerian government and its supporters who wish to rewrite history may claim that war is war, and no genocide was committed against the Igbos or against Biafra, or that genocide cannot be proven, those of us who survived the war tell a different story. The testimonies you have heard tell a different story. Current state of events and the wanton massacre of our people today is a continuation of that genocide. The genocide continues in the form of the mass killings, rapes, displacement of Biafrans by the Fulani herders and their supporters. These people raid and pillage Biafran communities and murder the residents. But what is the Nigerian government doing to stem the increasing tide of killings of Biafrans? Nothing. We have not been safe since the British joined us to this diseased body called Nigeria. We have not been safe since the pogrom of 1966. Our people held in prisons have yet to be returned. Our youth abducted have not been returned yet. We are told that we must profess one Nigeria. Fellow Biafrans, let's get wiser. What are we waiting for? We must remember who we are. Remember Biafra. Remember Asaba. Remember Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, who has been held in captivity and wrongly accused. His whole crime, the demand for freedom, human rights, and dignity for his people. My people, it is time to rethink our places. It is time to rethink what we shall tell history. It is time to wake up. It is time to get wiser. I am Rose Hama, and this is BCB, the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra. Join us again. Follow us on Facebook and YouTube. Peace.
Kuatisha ukua kuwashangaza, sifa ni zako milele yote. Ukisema Bwana unasema, wanadamu waziimba sifa zako, malaika wanashuka mbele zako. Utukuzwe Bwana, uinuliwe. Ukisema Bwana unasema, wajaza mbingu yote na dunia. Utukufu wako wadumu milele yote, watosha. Ukisema Bwana unasema, tajiri wa tajiri, ufalme wa ufalme, simba wa kabila la Yuda, mkombozi wa ulimwengu, Yesu Kristo, wewe hakuna mshindani. ukisema Bwana unasema, ukisema Bwana wangu unasema, ukisema nani wako kupinga? Hajawahi kuwa na bado atakuwepo, Bwana wa ajabu Yesu. Ukisema Bwana unasema, wanadamu wazima sifa zako, malaika wanashuka mbele zako Bwana. Bwana wangu wastahili duniani na mbingu, wastahili Bwana, wastahili. Wewe ni kimbilio letu, tena msaada wanaoonewa. Wewe ni Alfa Omega, Yesu, Yesu, Yesu. Ukisema upendo wako wa ajabu Baba, uzuri wako watisha, Bwana wa mabwana, mfalme wa wafalme. Ukisema unasema, yote wayafanya kwa jinsi nawekwa huru. Mungu unaishi, hakuna kama wewe, yote wayafanya kwa jinsi nawekwa huru. Mungu unaishi, hakuna kama wewe.
Listen to the voice of a survivor of the Asaba massacre as he recalls his experience during that horror. Although he suggests that Nigeria won the war and Asaba won the peace because the daughters of Asaba married leading figures of the Nigerian military, one has to ask, at what price? How much development did such liaison bring to Asaba? Did it make up for the lives lost, thousands of lives lost during the massacre? We also want to remind our listeners or emphasize that in any war situation, conquering parties have often abducted the women and daughters of those they have conquered as war trophies. In this case, therefore, the two women that our speaker here refers to, Mrs. Babangida and her counterpart, may be seen as war trophies. That is for history to decide. But the extent to which these young women can be seen to having influenced the federal government's relationship with Asaba is also one that we will have to investigate or look at. It is also left to history to determine. We are dealing with a sad, sad, sad story, and no matter how one spins it, there is nothing beautiful about it. There is nothing to glorify or to brag about as good about it. I leave you with this, my people. So listen to this voice of a survivor of Asaba massacre. We end our program with his voice. Thank you for listening.
Ogbo sowe bụ ebe wakpo anyị won Nigeria. O village ọbụna kwadebe eyila akwa ọcha. N'elu na anyị bịa ịnabata ndị oyi anyị. Anya ịmụhụ na anyị bịa na ga-ese non the meetings. That is goodbye till we meet no more. In 1970, anyị bịa ka ije zụta ndị agha Nigeria. Bịa bulu egwu. anya mara na ọ bụ a game of death ka ịba n'ime ya nọ na iluzi wagadazi anyị n'ebu bịa singula ụmụ nwoke niile out ụmụ nwanyị bịa this side oge ka anyị afụzi the open fire kpakpakpakpakpakpakpa wee welugo machine gun gahube our people and they were slaughtered in thousands. Anyị nwa abụzi ndị nwe ike ịgbapụ ni bụ ndị ozu dakpudo n'azụ obero n'ebe a so nke a na-ekwu ife a ofu onye afụ m si mbanye na moto abanye na moto amụrụ na o nwekwa another killing field ndị CMS n'ogbo Sowa abịa n'ebe ọ na-ene ụmụ nwoke ka wajukwa ụmụ nwoke anyị wabịasị anyị gwa grave wabịasị anyị face ya the grave wasị anyị start saying your prayer ekpele ka na-ekpezi with other people one Land Rover land ya Oblubab Ali my classmate na New Better College Onitsha ofuzi am saying Sonny what are you doing here? He said, you know I'm from Masaba. It's to join my people. Ose mumu banyana moto zibo. He commanded me. Abiam banyana jeep where one other person, John Okonya, Amabanya. Anya the car drive from here to that place. They opened machine gun. The whole people there were mowed down. Ndị niile bụbu ụmụ nwanyị na-eni ifa ọ bụ ilu na-abọsa ozu maka nwa niile eji akwa ọcha ịbọsagide ozu fụ nke ịmarị ibuluje nni ya ị na-aga ifu udene ka ọ nọ n'enu mmadụ na pọnchị afọ ya ndị agha basị na onye nụsị ọgụ ọkụọ isi ya nwaanyị sigo ọgụ gbue ndị be anyị nụ mana ụmụ nwaanyị anyị abịa jee ahịa nkefa dịka nwaanyị ndidi aga ya nwudo ofu general Babangida ọ bụrụ Mrs. Babangida okpotọlia ụmụ ife nwe ogbogu onye ogbu ilo anwụrụ General Duba bụrụ first lady and a number of them evugia attract equal development to Asaba. So now they won the war and we won the peace. Ife na-agwa Nigerian government bụ na ọ dịka adị late. Nigeria dịka akwụ ụgwọ waji ndị Asaba. Onye gbu ọchụ ọkwa ọchụ. Wabịa akwa ọchụ agbu.
This is Rose Ama. And this is BCV. Remember Biafra. Remember the Asaba massacre and other massacres.
The more we fight together, 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 the more we fight together, and stronger we shall be. The more we fight together, 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 the more we fight together, and stronger we shall be.
Rising soul, rising soul.
Biafra is the only hope of Africa. Biafra is the only hope of Africa. Believe it or leave it, Biafra is the only hope of Africa.
We've been crying, the world claim not to hear. And we've been lamenting, the world claim not to hear. Our tears flow, the world claim not to see. And our blood flow, the world claim not to see. This is a crime, oh no, against humanity. Oh no, yeah, this is a crime. Eritrea spoke up, they were given independence. South Sudan spoke, they were given independence. Namibia spoke up, they were given independence. Give me the reason my people got to be neglected. Give me the reason my people got to be rejected. Give me the reason our freedom got to be a crime. Give me the reason our own freedom got to be denied. Hey, Biafra is the only hope of Africa. I tell you what, Biafra is the only hope of Africa. Hey, Biafra is the only hope of Africa. Believe it or leave it. Oh no. That was physical battle, and we're betrayed by the people them trust. Today's heroes are fighting. This is a spiritual battle. Let us unite and give Biafra a meaning. If we don't take time, we can remain in this slavery. No freedom of speech, no freedom of expression, no freedom of worship, no freedom of religion. Justice denied. Oh no, of my own very people. Hey. Justice denied. Hey. On the rising sun. Hey. Justice denied. Oh, my freedom fighter. Yeah. What is so bad? My people wanna be liberated. What is so bad? My people wanna be independent. What is so bad? My people wanna be alone. This is the time we will make it known to the world. Hey, Biafra is the only hope of Africa. Biafra is the only hope of Africa. Biafra is the only hope of Africa. I tell you what, Biafra is the only hope of Africa. Hospitality, positive, education, positive, economic, positive, hospitality. I tell you what, positive. Biafra is the only hope of Africa. Biafra is the only hope of Africans. I tell you what, Biafra is the only hope of Africa. Hey, Biafra is the only hope of Africa. My people will cry. Biafrans will cry. My people are suffering. Oh, Biafrans are
Incorporation of Biafra. Thank you for listening to us today. Join us next time for news, cultural, and educational programs. This is the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB.
My